Now, some more detail on MTN's interim numbers is Philip Short, is investment analyst at Old Mutual Investment Group. And here in our studios at the JSE, we've got Richard Hurst, is a senior analyst at Ovum. Let me begin with you, Richard. The market really does seem to be liking these results. I'm looking at the stock price now. You're looking at a gain of about 3.6%. I was just mentioning the point that the rand has been a good friend of MTN in this instance, and adding, I think, about 3 percentage points to the increase in the revenue numbers. At the same time, though, this is a company with huge challenges here in South Africa, as we saw with the MTRRS debacle, and also in Nigeria, where we know there are issues, from a regulatory framework. But the numbers have come through. The market seems to like it. What is it reading?
I think, for me, it's the story of the emerging markets growth. And I think that's, we can park the SA for a moment and just look at the emerging markets. You can see that there, MTN has become a bit of a master at managing these emerging market opportunities and taking out those elements of risk. Going into places where angels fear to tread, Iran, Syria, Yemen, all those, and taking the risk out. So I think that's what the market's liking.
And it's also a big financial risk, isn't it? Because I was talking to someone the other day and we were talking about the fact that MTN's treasury must look like a bank, because when you look at the number of countries where they operate and then how they manage that exchange risk when they report those numbers into the South African numbers, it must be some outstanding, complicated task.
You can see that because of the spread of their opcos, that's going to be a major challenge for them. But again, I think the way that they've started to package their opcos, that's making it easier for them to manage.
Philip, what did you like in those numbers when you look overall in terms of the delivery on subscribers? You are talking about an increase of 3.5%, revenue up 10.7%, a 3 percentage point boost from the weaker rand we're adding, but Nigeria looking at pretty healthy, really.
Hi, yes. I think the numbers were pretty decent overall. They were assisted by the currency, a weaker rand. But the one thing that stood out for me was the improved margin in Nigeria that went up from 57 to 60%. That really moved the dial. If we look at the revenue, that came in slightly weaker than I expected, but overall with the better margins, it was quite a good result.
In spite of South Africa, what about that South African picture? I was looking at a story earlier on from one of the news agencies, and they're talking about the fact that they actually lost 1 million subscribers here.
Yes, I think they've been hemorrhaging in the South African market for about the last 18 months. I mean, if we look back to when Cell C started with their sort of aggressive pricing about 18 months ago, MTN was, they were a bit complacent and they didn't react soon enough. The one thing to watch now is that it almost seems like the knee-jerk reaction is that they're probably reacting too aggressive in dropping their prices so aggressively. So it remains to be seen how this market will evolve for MTN.
Are you talking about that promotion which talks about winning a plane?
Well, every time you look, there's a new person with lower prices and then the other competitor with lower prices. So it's good for the consumer, I suppose.
Yeah, indeed. Richard, let's talk about some of the headwinds when you look at a stock like MTN. I mean, we're talking about the potential of Nigeria. We're talking about the difficult, in some cases, hostile environments where they operate in Syria, Iran, etc., Sudan. But at the same time, you also look at the complex challenges that they have in South Africa. What do you watch out for if you're coming into this stock?
I think let's just, if we look to the MTR, which gave them a massive knock on their voice revenue. And if we look also in Nigeria, there was a similar knock, but it was less, it was about 10%. But my sense is that the sector regulators across Africa are going to start looking at the cost of communications, and one of the things that they will be looking at is MTRs, which will probably affect MTN in a very negative manner, as it's done in South Africa. Another key issue is that MTN needs to learn to compete in competitive markets such as SA. There's increased competition here, but soon that type of competition is going to hit in those emerging markets where it has found its home.
Okay, so we're talking about competition, we're talking about regulatory threats.
Yes.
Okay. Philip, anything you can add to that list?
No, actually, but before Richard said that, I was thinking to myself that the two things that you have to be able to cope with, and should be part of your investment case and thoughts, is regulation and competition. And those are the two things that will direct your investment case for telcos.
Yeah, I was looking at their data numbers a few minutes ago. Now, data users up 7.3% high at 88.5 million. And I was thinking, come on, they should be able to do more, no?
From my point of view, looking at Vodacom and then growth of data subscribers, they should be doing a lot more. I think the key is going to be the price of the data services. So they need to look at that, where we've seen the price war in South Africa around the voice tariffs. But my view is that the next one will probably revolve around data.
Philip, would data represent the future of MTN to the exclusion of voice? Because we did see in this set of numbers, voice was under pressure, as would have been expected anyway, given the emergence of these other social platforms where we're able to communicate for free.
Yes, voice is coming under pressure. Data is the future for growth, and it's still very low penetration in terms of data in the markets outside of South Africa. But as Richard says as well, I mean, the pricing is going to come down for data quite a lot. So you could have your volume or your traffic increasing by a multiple. But when that price of data comes down as well, it could negate quite a lot of the upside in that.
Absolutely. There's no doubt that there is definitely opportunity on that front, especially when you look at the fact that, I mean, from a broadcasting perspective, we want to be able to reach our audiences through the mobile phone companies. But at the moment, you can't do it. Even if you try, it's hugely expensive. Lastly, let's talk a little bit about the M&A side. I saw a little note in the statement from Sfiso Dabengwa where you were saying we continue to look out for X and X, and then he also said on the M&A front we also continue to look out for opportunities. What opportunities, Philip?
Well, it's been rumored in the last couple of weeks that they are looking at a number of Indian acquisitions. From Tata to Arcom and Idea, they have. I mean, there's been a long history with them actually tying up or doing a deal with Indian telcos, Bharti, Reliance Com. So I'm sure there's. Yes, I'm pretty sure that there's some truth to the current rumors, and they've got the balance sheet to do it, and they haven't been. In fact, some people say they've got a lazy balance sheet, that they're not highly geared. They've got a lot of cash. That if they're not paying it out to shareholders, they're probably holding out to do an acquisition.
Would you support an acquisition?
Yeah, I think if we look at where MTN is right now, you can see that they're definitely on the acquisition trail. But when it comes to those Indian companies, I see it more of a merger as a pure acquisition. And then there's all the other regulatory things that tend to hang off.
Absolutely, like we saw the last time when they tried to do that alliance with Bharti.
And it becomes a very difficult deal to mesh together. I sort of, years ago, I looked at perhaps hooking up with the Chinese entities. The Chinese entities were very interested in Africa, of course.
Should they look at the Chinese?
Well, I think it was the Chinese looking at
MTN rather than the other way. What about the fact that we know that if they try to go overseas, obviously there are going to be those regulatory challenges. But the other thing is, I mean, he's raising the issue of the lazy balance sheet. At the same time, some people are saying, after the last wave of acquisitions, MTN's focus ought to have been internal, sweating the assets and trying to get as much value as they can out of this huge business that they have built. Have they done enough on that front?
Okay, that's a very nice question, but I think they should have been focusing on their internal efficiencies and growing organically. I think if we look at the SA operation, we haven't seen that materialize to the extent that we would like to have seen it.
Philip, I didn't get a chance to look at their ARPU numbers. Were you able to take a look at those?
Unfortunately not. I haven't had time to look at those.
Yeah, I think it would have been interesting to see where they are going with that, because certainly that's one way we know they've been pressure. But interestingly, in the morning, I remember listening to CNBC Europe, and they were talking about the fact that in Europe, you're beginning to see some of the older operators beginning to get their ARPU numbers up again, because people are beginning to get back to using cell phones, especially with the emergence of the smartphones. So many functions and so much that you can do with your data. Is there an opportunity for them from that front? Let me start with you, Richard, and then end with Philip.
I would suppose, you know, in the fact that they're shedding these subscribers, so they should be looking to creating more valuable subscribers, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And there are mechanisms that they can deploy to increase their ARPU, such as you mentioned, data, etc.
Yeah.
But I think there's also a feeling within the consumers that there's a set amount that they're going to pay per month on their communications.
Yeah.
So they need to deliver the value and show that, and then you'll see that will maintain. If it might not increase, but it'll probably maintain at decent levels.
Yeah. Philip, lastly, your comment. Do you think there's more they could be doing on that front?
Yes, I do. I think, but if you look at some of the European players, they're getting those ARPUs to increase also because many of those mobile players are also fixed line players. So what they're doing is they're offering TV, your internet, and your mobile phone. So they're putting that all in one bundle and selling it to you. So you're getting higher ARPUs because there's more services. Maybe MTN won't be able to do that, but I think, as you say, with smartphones getting smarter and being able to do more, you know, you'll be able to watch TV on your cell phone, and that's something that people will be willing to pay for. But you're going to need a very, very good network. It's going to have to be fast, and it's going to have to be seamless.
Absolutely. At the moment, I can tell you the only place where I'm able to do that is if I'm at work and I use the work Wi-Fi. Now, I'm telling the guys at Technical what I've been doing with my Wi-Fi connection. That was Philip Short, investment analyst at Old Mutual Investment Group, Equities. Thank you for joining us from Cape Town. And Richard Hurst, senior analyst at Ovum. Thank you for joining us here in our studio in Johannesburg.